Hello, everyone. Welcome to Shift Your Shame and Guilt into Deeper Intimacy and Connection. I'm Michelle Alva, and I'm so grateful to be here with Yari Sequeira. And we are just super excited to share with you all what exactly is shame and guilt, and then also understanding on a deeper level how we can process and heal and benefit ourselves from sometimes years and years and years of repressed emotions. And we're going to allow each other together as a group to just expand and heal, and our intention is for everybody to walk away with a deeper understanding, and also how we can empower ourselves and how we can serve ourselves from the inside out, because then we're also serving the collective, since we're all one. We're not really separate. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thank you for being here, Yari. And I'm really excited to do this. And maybe I should just share, just really quick, my background begins with shame, as I had sexual trauma when I was 14 years old. And I was raised Catholic and Latina. And basically, I lost my virginity when I was 14, but I didn't really know exactly that it was sex. My mom never talked to me about sex, but I kind of put two and two together. His penis is going in my body, and I was very traumatized because I really didn't want it to happen. So when I lost my virginity, I was ashamed. I didn't want anyone to know, and I thought that God didn't love me anymore because I'm not a virgin. So I was 14. I didn't know all these other things. Today, I'm a Tantra practitioner. I teach people how to orgasm and connect to their energetic orgasm and beyond the physical realm, and connect to our hearts. And so sex was not something that was orgasmic and blissful. And in my life, my mom, from her upbringing, she was raised by German nuns in a boarding school in Peru. And so her background of sex and her just beliefs, it put all these beliefs on my upbringing, and how basically you're dirty, you're damaged goods, if you have sex and you're not married. And so I feel like I walked around with this gray cloud my whole life, thinking that something's wrong with me. And so I was very ashamed, and it manifested into chronic pelvic pain. And I had that for 14 years of my life, where I thought sex was painful. My later on sexual experiences were all painful. And then when I had a emotional release in the bathtub 14 years later, at age 28, I released the memory of this first sexual experience. I released a lot of shame and guilt in the bathtub, and I just started crying and just, you're not dirty, you're not damaged goods. There was this inner processing of emotions that after that incident at age 28, that cathartic release in the bathtub, I literally no longer had pain. And so that made me realize how holding on to shame and guilt and all those energies or those emotions for 14 years of my life could be liberated, first of all, in seconds. And then after that, having sex again, it didn't hurt me. I never felt that same pain ever again. And so my background as a physical therapist never talked about emotional release. We didn't learn that you can hold shame and guilt in your body tissues. And so some of us don't even know that our chronic vagina pain or sexual pain or shoulder pain or neck pain might be due to unprocessed emotions. So that's where I'm so passionate today. I've created the ALVA Method of rapid healing, self-healing empowerment. It's rapid because it could happen in seconds, and it's because you learn how to be your own shaman. You learn how to be your own medicine man and medicine woman, and really alchemize through your body using hypnosis, NLP, the different breathing practices. That's a whole other topic, but my clients go from an 8 out of 10 to a 0 in just one session. And it depends on how open and willing and how safe they feel. And so there's people that have been holding on to pain for years and years and years, and go to therapy and go to physical therapy and go to all these other things. And no one's teaching them enough how to just harness their own and shift their mindset with their body and their vibration. And so I feel what I do is a beautiful complement to all traditional forms of healing and therapy. And that's where I love working with Yari, because she's such an amazing mental health counselor, and she's just an amazing healer. And I'm really grateful to be here and be here with you, Yari. So we're in for a big treat today, folks. Hold on, we can't hear you, Yari.
Are your computer speakers on? Michelle, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Oh, hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yari, do you want to come on and then come back off, or come off and then come back on, just because sometimes this happens. And what I was saying is, I have this mantra I repeat is, everything's always perfect. So when things happen in a way that maybe we didn't want to happen, or there's a challenge, I just say everything's always perfect, and it just kind of clears the energy. Like, I just got a car, a brand new 2020 car, and my daughter backed up into the wall after 3 days, and I just bought the car. And that's what I went, ah, and then I thought, everything's always perfect. And so I can't control other people. I can't control what is happening, but I can say everything's always perfect, and trust in this higher collective consciousness that everything is always perfect. And that makes your adrenal glands relax so much more, because you're no longer going against life. You're not resisting that your husband cheated on you. You're not resisting that you were sexually traumatized, something happened. You're just allowing it to happen, because some things we cannot fight, like we could just surrender that things happened and let them go. And then ask yourself, what do I wish to create? So what I wish to create is Yari coming back on. What I wish to create is an awesome class with everyone. And so what I keep focusing on is where I'm gonna create more. And so there she is, perfect. And we shall see what happens here. Yeah, do you have a phone? You could just use your phone on Zoom, because sometimes that works. Yeah, so everything's always perfect is a lesson, it's a teaching, it's something that it's in alignment with, I heard Oprah say, everything's happening for us. When I went to one of her events that just changed my life, she said, I realized everything was happening for me, so she could be the Oprah she is today. And that really helped me. And then I just thought, well, I'm just gonna start looking at everything as perfect. So this whole COVID thing, the things that are happening in the media, what can we learn from it? How can we grow from it? And so let's see if Yari's joining us now.
I hope this time you can hear me.
Yes! Everything's always perfect.
That is so funny. Okay, the third is the charm. I think it's because I installed a new webcam, and I think that might be messing my audio. But here I am, people. Thank you for the waiting. Thank you for your patience. I'm here live now.
Yay! Thank you for being here, Yari.
Of course.
So I'd love it if you just let everybody know your passion, what it is about us. I just shared a lot about my life personally, and why am I here, our story. And because I know for you, it's so amazing what the work you're doing.
Yeah, so I love how Michelle started, because we're all storytellers. And she shared a bit of her story. I'm going to share a bit of mine, but I just wanted to start saying that everybody here, not only in this Zoom meeting, but everybody in the world is a storyteller of their own. And the power of our story can do so much for each and one of us. So it's always important to recognize that and start with your story. Having said that, stories change so much throughout time that we can also choose which story we want to share, right? So for me, I've been in this field since I think I was born. I was introduced to counseling because there was family dynamic and family situations, and my mom just kind of counseled or counted on me for her stuff. And I don't know if that has happened to any of you. And what that caused in me was a very much passionate interest in wanting to learn more about why things were happening and how I could be of help, how I could be supportive. And that, fast forward, led me into being in school and taking psychology as a class and deciding at the age of early on that this is the field I wanted to pursue, because I not only wanted to understand others, but also wanted to understand myself. So in that path, I've been walking since high school, pretty much in this field, and I now have a Florida State master's in the field, thankfully. But aside from that, I also like to consider myself just a holistic individual that likes to integrate not only the classical concept of counseling, but what's out there in the community and what's relevant to each and every one of us that comes with our story, because each story is different from the other. So I like to integrate the stories that we all bring into the table and see how the combination of it can ignite something that is more powerful to your story that you're about or in the process of creating in the moment we meet. So thank you all for being here and starting to share that story with us today as well.
And I think it'd be cool if people want to comment when you think of the word shame. Shame! What's the first thing that comes to your mind? And if there's anything that you're holding that you're ashamed about.
Judgment, yeah.
Judgment.
Damaged, dirty. Embarrassment, yeah.
And I just want to acknowledge that Beth, I will, please remind me later on, because I would love to touch on that. And I want to mention when we have chronic pain, because someone sent a question here about, do I believe in fibromyalgia? Do you not believe in fibromyalgia? I was diagnosed by this rheumatologist, chronic pain due to herniated discs in my cervical spine from a car accident and terrible sciatica, especially on the left side of my body. I would love your thoughts on this later on. So fibromyalgia, pretty much doctors don't know what it is, and you know, they can't see it on an x-ray, they can't see it on an MRI. And what my background, 23 years working with people, many different people can clear pain. And sometimes it's like people don't want to hear this, but the story, what's your story about your fibromyalgia? When you think about fibromyalgia, put that on a piece of paper. Later on we could talk about this. Are you ashamed that you have it? Are you embarrassed about it? This accident that you had, what story did you make up about the accident? Are you mad at the person? Do you not like how the medical care was? The whole thing, it's not just fibromyalgia. There's some place that it started, and your body keeps a score, and your body accumulates and accumulates beliefs, perceptions, stories. So if you thought something was really heavy, if you think your fibromyalgia dominates your life, it will. And so I used to have chronic pain for 14 years of my life. I used to play the victim role. I thought I was the victim. And I thought that God didn't love me. I thought I was damaged goods. I thought I was dirty. I judged myself. And what I have learned is that I made up stories about how people hurt me. So after all these different thousands of dollars I've invested on courses and trainings and worked with actual clients and myself, what I have come to understand, it's a decision that you decide one day and you say, I'm going to heal whatever it is that I have. Whatever I have, whatever that diagnosis is, I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to love it. I'm going to grow from it. It is actually a gift and an opportunity. And when we change our lenses so that we can then say, I'm just going to start to reflect and have more compassion, more acceptance, journal about it. You know, there's a whole slew of things that we could do, and look at it as a blessing. How has this fibromyalgia benefit my life? How has this cancer? How has this cold? How has this corona? How has this rape? So when you start to look at it as that happened to me, that's what's showing up, and you look at it in a different perspective, it will give you something different. So whether I believe in your fibromyalgia is irrelevant. It's what do you believe about your own, whatever it is, whatever it is. And so we can definitely talk more in depth one-on-one if you want. And for the purpose of this group, we're talking about shame and guilt, and then how that could lead to deeper intimacy and connection. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and that goes to what we had a little conversation or a chat, a Zoom event last month where we talked a lot about that. And there's actually a book called The Body Keeps the Score. So if you're interested in reading more about it, which is what Michelle mentioned, the book is literally called that, and it explains how our body is going to retain information for us, emotions, traumas, whatever it is that was something impactful, and it's going to carry it through until we start paying attention to what is the meaning behind that, where did it come from, and what was the purpose of it, right? So again, the book is called The Body Keeps the Score. Now, going back to the comments that you all shared, when we start thinking about shame, there's a lot of things that come to mind. And depending on how we have experienced it, right, we're going to also share from that experience and add our own subjective sparkle to it. But when we start looking into the definition of shame, this is where, again, the storytelling begins, because we have the modern definitions, or the ones that we're familiar with, and then we have the roots, which are how the word started. And in the work that myself and Michelle engage in, we're very much about tapping into those roots, because the root is what started the foundation, and that's why it's important for us to look into. So the normal definition of shame, if you look it up and Google it, it's going to say that it's an unpleasant self-conscious emotion due to a negative evaluation of yourself. And that is pretty good. It involves self-conscious awareness, so that is important. Yet when we start looking at the etymology of the word, there are two influences that come in. So from the Old Norse, we have the root kinrati, and that was associated to becoming cheek in the red on your cheeks. So it had to do with a physiological response to an experience that we were having, right? So that root establishes the importance of our physiological responses to an experience that we are having in our reality. And then there's a second root to that, which is coming from the Old English, and that's from scamu, and it has to do with loss of esteem. So that is the closest that the modern definition gets to, because what I just read, it says unpleasant self-conscious emotion, and it also goes in and says, you know, there's a withdrawal of motivation and feelings of distress and exposure. When you start reading more of the root, it also tells you that shame is about something that has not been uncovered. So it's something that is hidden, right? So when we start incorporating those definitions, those root causes, we have to start asking ourselves, what is it that is still hidden in us that might be triggering or activating this emotion that I recognize as shame, and that my body is also having a physiological response to the point where I get red in my cheeks because it's shameful, right? So that is the first question that I would like to bring up. And I would like for all of you to comment below and answer. So it is, what aspect of yourself is it still hidden? And you can choose from all the many different stories or all the many facets of yourself, something that you feel comfortable or not as much comfortable, but that you're ready to share. What do you feel you are still hiding about yourself?
So you can comment that if you dare to publicly. You can also send it privately to us and then we'll read it out loud. And healing means to become whole. So just the fact that you're even feeling what that is the first step to healing. So if some of you dare not write it, you don't have to. We're not forcing anyone, but just give yourself the opportunity. You could even close your eyes and just ask yourself, what don't I want anyone to know? What did I do in the past that I'm so embarrassed about or ashamed about? Or what do I don't want anybody to know because they might judge me because you judged yourself already years ago. So yeah, someone wrote, some days I'm ashamed to admit that I struggle with feelings of depression. Showing on purpose of what I am fearful, being sexually abused. And so just notice the energy of this. It's kind of like sluggish, like, oh, we got to share what? Can't you guys just teach us stuff? Who I am as a person who has not been used, or that this deep belief that my body is my currency. I still feel shame about my thoughts about food and my eating disorder, sexuality. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. And as you share, notice the feeling that arises in your body as you share. My record, being a queer woman, sexuality, nursing. So what do you mean by that? Sexuality, nursing, or was that a spell check? I'm ashamed to share that I've been sexually abused and I'm put up with verbal, emotional, and physical abuse from my ex-husband. Oh, breastfeeding. Okay. So just the fact that you're actually sharing means that you are actually opening up to feeling, and then sharing it further reinforces the healing of it, because that means that because you shared, on some level, you have begun to accept and express yourself. It's so amazing. That's why it feels so good to go to the confessional in the Catholic, like confessing your sins, telling the priest. I remember it felt good. It was like a release, or just to tell a friend, and then they still love you. And you're like, because we actually are the only ones that need to approve of ourselves. But somehow when we have someone who we know won't judge us, it helps us to not judge our own self when we share that. Food issues, somebody else wrote, birth mother. I had a sexless marriage for a long time, not my choice. I felt humiliated and powerless, being rejected all the time. I question whether or not I am lovable. I had that question for a lot of years too, so I hear you.
People do. A lot of people question the good enough question, which is, I think, a standard for most humans on Earth, because in some way, shape, or form, we've had experiences that have not let us felt what our worth is, or that it was not validated by somebody else, because nobody really teaches us how to validate it for ourselves when we're coming up. So when we start talking about shame, and like Michelle said, and it's so powerful, and Michelle, go in it, straight into it, because we want all of you to start having the opportunity to start shifting that, instead of holding it and holding it and holding it, and then just saying, okay, but now what do I do? No, we want to start tapping into it, because that is the first thing we want to bring awareness to. Where is it? How is it coming through? What's the frequency behind it? So like Michelle mentioned, when everybody starts sharing, you can start feeling, from the words and the stories that everybody is putting out there, and it starts filling your body, and you start noticing, oh my God, where am I feeling it? How is my body responding? And you start paying attention to, do I want to say this? Do I want to say that? No, I think I'm not ready for that. So you start noticing yourself, which is step one. Step one is always noticing yourself. And through the stories of others, sometimes we start allowing ourselves to pay attention to our stories. And that's why if you don't feel comfortable sharing or mentioning something specifically right now, it's okay, because the power of the collective is that somebody will have a similar feeling behind that, that's going to connect to yours and allow the shift to happen as well, right? So don't hold back or feel bad or shameful or guilty because you're not sharing. No, the fact that you're here and that you're listening and contributing with your presence is going to allow that shift to start happening as well, right? So just start noticing yourself and ask yourself, question number 2, for how long have I been carrying this story hidden, or this aspect of myself in silence? Or for how long have I been protecting this so that nobody gets to see it, right? So that's question number 2, related to what you first answered or what came to your mind for the first question. You know, as everybody thinks and is tapping into it, I know that for me, one of my stories is that my dad was unfaithful to my mom for many years. And for me, that was a big no, you don't talk about that. You know, that is shameful, and it brings so many other emotions, and people are going to ask so many questions, and I just don't want to deal with that. I don't want to answer to anybody. I don't even want to answer to myself how that would make me feel, because then it would mean that I would have to evaluate or reassess how I felt about my dad, how I felt about my mom, how I felt about their marriage, society, other women. So many things that can come up when you start tapping into these reasons as to why you hold it in. And then I realized that, and of course we're going to take you all there, that how you tell your story is huge to how it comes forth for you. So the moment you start recognizing, and in my case, it was the moment I decided that I was going to be mindful of who my dad was as a man could be different from who he was as a father. And that there's so many aspects of him and so many aspects of my mom that had nothing to do with the pain that came with the story, that I could also integrate all that and see what I wanted to make from it, and how I wanted to step forward and continue the relationship with each one of them, both of them, and then finally say, what about that to the rest of the world with my perspective and my understanding of it, right? So let's see what you guys have. I can hear you.
Somebody wrote, I've been working on releasing this fear for a long time, and it has freed me up big time. 13 years I've been feeling this. 17 years, somebody else wrote. Yeah, since early adolescence, someone else wrote. And someone else wrote, since 2016, when I was first told for the first time by a woman that I didn't satisfy her. All of my partners in the past never had any issue until 2016. And what made it worse was the relationship after that one had the same challenges, issues. And so that's the amazing part, where first and foremost, because I teach women how to orgasm, it's not the man's responsibility to make the woman orgasm or be great in bed. A woman herself is orgasmic and turned on, and that's her responsibility. So it's not your responsibility. And I'm just gonna let you take over that one, Yari.
Yeah, so we have to start looking into, okay, so 13 years, a decade, you know, we start noticing that we've been holding on to this shame for a while. And when we start holding on to it, because it is distressing, we start wanting to numb it, right? For whatever reason, just like somebody mentioned, somebody told me that it was my fault, so I decided to stay quiet about it. Or I said something on Facebook and then people started coming at me and commenting, so I decided that I wasn't going to do that. So whatever reason came your way that you said, no, you know, I'm not ready for this, this is not for me, we start numbing. numbing starts expressing itself in many different ways. So the question here becomes, how did you start noticing how it started expressing for you? And for instance, fibromyalgia could come into the picture in this moment, depending on for how long we have numbed this emotion, or for how long we haven't been wanting to start looking into it or talk about it, so we repress it. Disease is very much associated with the development of our very hush-hush approach towards our own emotions, reality, and stories. So even though it's going to be emotionally numbed by us, it is still going to express itself in some way, shape, or form, usually physically or with your attitude towards things. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, what happened to you? Like, I've been noticing that you're not yourself anymore, or you've changed. You weren't this way. So have you noticed how you have numbed? And how has that worked out for you? Have you numbed and expressed your shame through body experiences or diseases or symptoms? Have you numbed and expressed that shame through your behaviors and how you started doing things differently from an attitude that was not wholeheartedly joyful? How did you decide that you were going to numb and at the same time express that somewhere, somehow, so that it would still come out, even though you might not be as aware that it was coming out, right? A lot of people wrote, I gained a lot of weight. So when you start paying attention and you start going back and tracing your steps, you say, oh my God, you know, maybe it is related to my weight. Maybe it's related to my food issues. Maybe it's related to the fact that I don't want to have sex as much, or I feel some type of way about sex. Maybe it's related to my eating disorder. Maybe it's related to the relationships I now have with my family because I created a wall, or with other people as well. Maybe it's coming out in the way I protect myself with my partner, right? And how I'm playing out stuff that I know might not be working out for me, but I am blaming and projecting or letting this shame come out in some way, shape, or form. Somebody just wrote, I focused on other things. Yeah, we distract ourselves, right? We tend to distract ourselves, but the shame is going to continue evolving. The root was planted, and then the seed is going to start coming up. And the seed is not there to harm us. The seed is there and it's going to grow so that we can notice it and pay attention to it and say, okay, oh my God, you're there. I hadn't noticed you. Oh my God, you're so tall. It's because you want me to see that you have been here with me for such a long time. And now that I am noticing you and that I know I've held you for all this time because you've grown so much, what do I want to do with you, right? So my third question becomes, what value of yours, what personal value of yours, what standard of yours has been disregarded or substituted by the shame caused by the experience that you've been carrying for so long? What value have you not expressed that you wholeheartedly would like to retake back? Okay. Michelle, do you have any comments on that?
Can you repeat the second question, because I'm writing it here for people?
What personal value was substituted by the shame? So in a concise way, because when shame stays with us and we hold it for a long time, then we're silencing a personal value of ours that is not going to be able to be expressed wholeheartedly because shame is on the way. So what personal value has been silenced for so long that you are now, by your observing of this emotion that has been taking its place, and saying, okay, I want to start paying attention to it. What value of mine do I want to start bringing in to start equating and balancing this emotion that I've been carrying for so long? Because this is about me and my standards. Shame is very much about me, my self-consciousness, and my standards about myself.
So, you know how we wear a mask, how somebody asks you, how are you doing? And you're like, great. And we wear a mask and we act like everything's okay. We pretend. Mm-hmm. So being authentic, being vulnerable, being honest with ourselves is healing. So when we hide, when we wear a mask and we act like everything's okay, but in reality it's not okay, the thing is, some of us neglect or we abandon ourselves as a protective mechanism. So it's really important for us to have so much compassion. So if you're out there right now listening and you're like, oh my God, I put on all this weight, or I dissociate, I'm not emotionally available, and you're catching on to yourself, it's so important for us to be grateful for the protective part of us that caused us to dissociate. That's your coping mechanism. You've done the best you can as a child to block out that sexual trauma, to block out that your parents yelled all the time or that your mom was mean to you. And so it's so important for us to just take a moment to hug ourselves and just say, you're awesome, you're doing your best. We don't have to be so hard on ourselves about this whole thing. Sometimes we're like, why am I like that? You know, why don't I make sex a priority? Why am I so shut down? And so instead of saying why, we can say, okay, whoa, I'm feeling that, like, and feel it, just like we've been doing. You can journal about it, write about everything that you feel, and then you can just, that's what happened, that's your past, and then know that your body is so smart that it caused you to gain the weight. Like it did everything it could, but then you're like, but wait a minute, I don't want that to be my coping mechanism. And isn't this awesome that you're aware of it, that now through working with us, for example, you would get conscious to it, and then you would be able to then create your new you. You would be able to recreate based on the past, and then reflecting on what you wish to create, going deeper inside, then you would get to create something new. And that's what I've done in my life. I used to play the victim. I used to have chronic pain. Sex was painful. My whole body was not really a fun place to be. I never even touched myself till I was 37 years old. I had my first orgasm by myself at age 37, only 10 years ago. I'm 47 now. And so we can shift. We can shift shame and guilt into a deeper intimacy and connection. And I'm so excited we're all here.
Yes, and then also for some of the comments that have been shared, sometimes we think that our shame is about this, and then we start observing and we're like, wait a minute, no, I don't think it's that. No, wait, I think it might be related to this. And then we start coming down because we start taking off our mask, and we start realizing that maybe there's something in underneath that.
Beth wrote, I'm not sure I can relate to feeling shame personally. I am open about my food.
He interviews and he asks her, what are you here for? Am I back?
Yeah, what were you, could you hear me?
Yeah, something happened where it like reloaded.
Because Beth wrote, I don't feel like I can identify with shame specifically, but I'm not sure what the emotion is, perhaps more resentment, that I've let my food issues get so bad. So the wording that you use, Beth, I mean, you're using the word bad, resentment. It's as though it's like a more connotation that it's not something so uplifting. So there's this attitude of, it's like your attitude towards what you have that affects what you have. So when we say something's good or bad, that's more of a judgment we're placing on our own selves. So what if we just started to look at everything happening as an opportunity to grow and to create something new, to shift and be inspired to do something new. And that's it. And you don't have to say my gaining weight is bad. It's bad. You know, what I did is bad. I'm not having sex. It's bad. You just don't even have to ever do that again to yourself. You could just be like, okay, cool. That was my past, and now what kind of a sex life do I want? What kind of a relationship with food do I want to create? What type of a relationship with boundaries and personal space do I want to create? That's where we come in to support you guys to create more and navigate through the challenges instead of just sitting in our shit, you know? And we're like, what do I do with all this shit? Well, we could turn it into fertilizer. I don't
So there are some people, because somebody wrote, you know, right now that they've been carrying this judgment. And when we carry judgment for such a long time towards ourselves, we sometimes bottle it all up and it becomes like this huge ball. And that's why, like Michelle was saying, if we start looking at the ball of, okay, this is a ball. It's not a bad ball. It's not a fantastic ball. It's just a ball of emotions. I want to start being curious about what's inside this ball and what is it there for me that I need to know about this ball. So for instance, Beth said judgment. Okay, then how are you noticing how you are applying judgment to yourself on a regular basis? So that way you start shifting into a word that is more open for yourself, that allows yourself to start expressing about yourself differently. And then you start looking into what standards are you applying to that particular event, situation, experience. Is this judgment coming from you? Is it coming from society? Is it coming from family? Where did you learn that this bad thing happened to you, or that it's bad for you to look this way, or associate yourself with this, or identify yourself as this or the other, right? Where is that standard coming from? Because most of the time our standards are taught by somebody when we were a kid. So it is okay for us to say, okay, now I have this huge ball of somebody else's standards that I've been taught and carried for so long. Now I want to explore which ones of these resonate with me, which ones don't anymore, and which ones have I disregarded because I wasn't even curious about expanding my ball with new standards, right? So this is where we start creating a new way for ourselves.
Something I learned in neurolinguistic programming, NLP, this approach of influencing ourselves to shift, is who am I being when I say I'm not lovable? What identity am I being? Am I being an empowered goddess? Am I being a victim? Who am I being? Am I being my mom? You know, when I judge myself about masturbation, for example, I didn't touch myself till I was 37 years old after my divorce, because some sex therapist I met by chance at an event was like, you don't have a toy? You know, you're divorced, honey. You've been married for 20 years. And why aren't you exploring yourself? You know, what is wrong with you, this woman? And I was like, a toy? No, you know, this is the first thing I was like, no. And I was like, what does that even mean? And so I made myself go to Lincoln Road, and I went to this Rooster. It was like some sex toy shop, and I remember I wanted to like cover my face like, no one, I hope I don't run into anybody I know. And it was really amazing how the judgment, just to open that door and go in there and go into this whole other world, and it really wasn't that terrible. And how much we make up in our mind how bad something is, but then when we really open up and we go there and do something, it's really not that terrible. And so it's amazing how our mind, our beliefs, our perceptions, who we're being, affects so strongly how we're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right. And again, that my key word for today is the storytelling that we're incorporating. Which story are we telling ourselves when we are looking at these standards? When we're looking at this ball and saying, okay, this came from my dad, this came from my mom, this came from society in general, this came from my friend, this came from my ex-boyfriend, oh, this came from the girl that rejected me sexually. Okay, first we start exploring what's in the ball. Then we start looking into, does this have to do with my personal standards, with my personal value? What even is my personal value? Like, I don't know, Yari or Michelle, what are you guys talking about? Okay, not knowing is a great place to be, because it allows for expansion and exploration and curiosity and adventure. So if you are unsure, this is a good time for you to start looking into, okay, what is a personal value? Let's start with that, right? What types of values are out there? Okay, we have love, respect, honesty, caring, affection, forgiveness, acceptance, flexibility. And then you print out that list and you start saying to yourself, which ones resonate with me? And you start circling those values. And this is where guilt comes in too, right? This is where we're going to integrate guilt, because guilt is about you have committed a crime or a sin. That is the modern definition of it. But the etymology of it is that there's a debt that had to be paid. And that meant a money debt, right? Somebody owes somebody to something. It has nothing to do with you being incriminated or you being bad or you being a horrible person. No. Guilt is about paying. You have something that needs to be looked into because you have to pay it, right? So when we bring it towards ourselves, what have I been in deficit because of this, that, or other experience that I am now ready to look into so I can balance it out, so I can squash it, or I can start removing myself differently or shifting myself differently or healing this differently, right? How am I going to start paying myself with my own personal standards and my own personal values? And the main personal value that could be explored here is acceptance and forgiveness. Michelle, do you want to add something?
Oopsie. Yeah, I just wrote, how am I going to start paying myself with my own personal values? This is really important. When I teach this 10-day Wow Women of Abundance class, and we talk a lot about this, this guilt feeling. Guilt is lack. You're lacking something. So when you're in abundance, you're owning, you're accepting, you're embracing all of who you are. And so it's really important for us to realize that this we can look as an opportunity to deepen self-love. So you can start to look at everything that you're ashamed about, everything that you feel guilty about, that you owe, as an opportunity to deepen self-love, self-acceptance, self-compassion, to be kinder to yourself, more loving to yourself. So when we say, I'm not lovable, do you value being lovable, or do you value being loved? Do you value yourself? And what are you deciding to create? Are you deciding to recreate and recreate every single day the same story? Or are you going to decide to create a whole new self-loving, self-accepting, self-compassionate? And so people say, well, I don't know what that's like. And that's where working with us, you can become more stronger at self-love. You can learn the muscles of self-acceptance, which you can learn it. Just like you learned how to be in deficit, it's just the other side. I say it's like flipping over a pancake. You can look at it this way, you know it really well like this, and then it's just about, okay, well, how would I like it to be? That's where I use neuro-linguistic programming techniques to reprogram, reframe our subconscious mind, but then we also elevate our vibration, and that's something we're gonna do in just a couple minutes so that everybody can feel the whole integration, because 99% of yourself is energy, and emotions are energy in motion. However, when you thought about what you were ashamed about or what you felt guilty about, I don't know if you all noticed, but there was this kind of sluggish, like, I don't want to write about where I'm ashamed about. You're not like, oh my gosh, let me tell you what I'm ashamed about. Okay, so I did this, and this happened to me. The energy of shame is like, oh man, you're like back here, like, I have to write that on the comment section. That's the energy of shame. So shame has a certain energy, and it's more about this. It's more about this. It's stagnation, it's lack. And then guilt is kind of like a spear. That's how I feel about it, is like, oh my God, you know, when you're carrying burdens, guilt, like burden is a lot of guilt. And so think about, what's the energy of guilt? What's the energy? If you ever cheated on someone, cheated on yourself, cheating on someone, because you're cheating on yourself, that's what's really happening. Notice, like, what is the energy of burden? What is the energy of guilt? How does it feel, the energy of guilt? And then you can think about, wow, how does the energy of gratitude feel? And so this is where it's so important for us not just to work with the mindset, it's important for us to work with the body and the feeling of what you wish to create, and then feeling the shit, feeling the burden, and then going to those places. So I would love to guide us, because we only have 8 more minutes. Is there anything else you want to share? And I know everybody's kind of like, oh my God, I want more. Like, this is awesome, right? This is why I invited Yari to be a part of this class, because she's so amazing, folks. And I highly recommend getting her email information, and I'll send it, and it's on the Eventbrite, and schedule a call with her, because she's amazing at these questions and how to guide you on this process of really discovering more for yourself. And I look at my services as a beautiful complement to hers, where if you want to dive deeper into your body, and if you are currently having mental health counseling, coaching, mental things, but you're feeling like, I also want to go into my vagina area, and I want to go into my prostate area, and I want to actually, what is down there, you know? If that's more where you're at, or if you're holding pain, or you have a lot of chronic UTI, you know, infections, or your body's just chronically, your sexual parts are getting something, or if your back hurts or your hips, that's the physical, energetic, emotional that also needs to be addressed to really process whatever this is. And so this is where the work I do is really about embodiment, and it's about going inside and feeling really safe and learning how to trust yourself. And when we talk about intimacy, intimacy, how many of you right now have a practice of massaging your belly, massaging your genitals? If you could just comment there. You touch your belly every day, or every other day, or once every week, and you're like, how does my tummy feel? How does my gut feel? And then you put your finger inside your vagina, ladies, and you scan, and you say, how do the walls of my vagina feel? Or for the gentleman, you touch behind your testicles and you say, how does my prostate feel? How does my sexual parts feel? Or how does my butt feel? Do you do that already? I would love to know if you can write that. And have you realized that your own massage, I will send you as a gift, this is what's coming up to share, a sensual massage practice. It's for men and women, and it'll teach you how to be sensual, because when you talk about intimacy, sensuality is intimacy. And that just means that you turn off the TV, you stop thinking about those taxes you got to get done, or whatever you got to get done, and you are with your body. And this is one way where sensuality is, I am completely here. I sense my skin, the temperature, I feel the texture. I'm sensing myself through my touch, pressure, vibration, you know, depending on what you're doing. And you're totally immersed in the present moment awareness through your senses. So it could be through the sense of sound, the sense of touch, taste, the visual, looking at yourself in the mirror, doing some mirror work, or just, when was the last time you just looked at your body? You're like, wow, this is divine, made by creator, source, and whoa. And so sensual, this is what it means to really be immersed in the present moment through whatever the different sensations are. And it is not just sexual to be sensual. They're separate, and they could be integrated, because when you start to touch yourself down here, it starts to feel sexually arousing. However, you could also spend time touching, let's just say, I'm trying to think of the least sexual part of my body, but I feel like my whole body's sexual. But you're just touching yourself and you're sensing it. Okay, so maybe my elbow. I would say my elbow, I don't really get that aroused when I touch my elbow, but it depends on what I'm thinking of, right? But this would be sensuality, and then touching my nipples would be sexual, because it definitely turns my coochie on to touch my nipples. I'm just being really vulnerable and authentic here. And it's almost like there's a little button down there that gets turned on when I do this to myself. And it feels good. And so some of us will feel like, some of you would have never done that in public, what I just did. And maybe some of you were like, oh my God, this woman's nuts. You know, so I feel comfortable, and I'm just doing this as a teacher. It's not like I'm here, you know, trying to just get off in front of everyone. You know what I'm saying? So there's a different intention, there's a different energy. And sexual is when you could just really be in touch with that sexual energy and let that sexual energy rise. And that's a whole other event that I teach Tantra classes, and I have one at the end of the month. So I'll be sharing that information when you get an email. And we'll share more. You know, I know Yari has an awesome event coming up too, that I will send the links to these, because today was awesome. We woke you up to feeling, wow. You know, I'd love to know if people are like, I had this eureka moment today. You know, I never knew shame had anything to do with my physicality. So if you want to just take a moment, is there anything you have a question about, or an aha moment you had, or something that you learned today? I would love to know. And if anybody has questions, we only have a couple minutes left. And just please know that we are here as a resource, and we're doing these classes once a month. And if there's any questions you all have that you're like, oh my God, I want more, that's your soul calling you. That's the coochie power, I call it, for the women. And for the men, I haven't come up with a name for it, but your sexual energy is your creative energy. So if you're feeling not creative, you're not feeling motivated, you don't really want to get up in the morning, depression is a suppression of emotions. So if you want to learn how to flow it more in your body, message me, because I would love to share with you more of this approach. And I am starting a class on July 22nd. If there's any women that want to really accelerate and be more abundant and feel more of your sexual energy flow and open up your hearts in your body, and you do more this body awakening, let me know, because I'm starting a class Tuesday called the Wild Women of Abundance. And I'm going to put the link for this class so that every woman can click on that and learn more about how to join me this week for this program. And you all get $200 off when you register, if you register today. So we can have a follow-up call later on. And there's many things you can do. We just hit the little bitty piece in the big glacier. And I'm really glad that we all got connected. And it's really up to you all to ask yourselves, how much of a priority is my freedom from my past? And in this lifetime, do I want to feel heaven on earth? Do I want to be orgasmic? Do I want to feel totally present in the moment? And I know Yari, I've met some of her clients, and they're super grateful that they did the intensive work that takes commitment and priorities. So valuing yourself is number one. And I'm really glad to be of service here today. And Yari, thank you so much for being with us. And remember, you can text, you can write on the comments, how did you benefit from the class? I would love to know, for people to
Yes,
share
for
that.
everybody, just a closing thought, which is for shame and guilt. Final question for you to take is, whose standards am I applying now in my life? For what reason? And am I happy with those? Or do I want to reevaluate and reassess? Standards are going to allow you to shift, especially when you bring in your personal standards. You're going to start making the shifting process a little bit smoother, because you're starting to connect with yourself more. And that's when shift and guilt start looking different for you, right? So again, thank you, Michelle. And thank you, everybody who participated. Like Michelle said, there's more information about us on the link that she sent. And I believe she's going to send more information as a gift to you all. So if you missed it, you can check our information there as well. And happy to always see you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach to any one of us.
Thank you. And do you want to mention the class that's coming up? I think you're having it on the 28th, right?
Next Saturday, which is the 25th, I'm going to have an IG live through my IG, which is @evolve_in. And it's going to be on how the influence of heteronormativity has impacted the way we express ourselves sexually, sensually, and just ourselves in general, when we're aware that we're just not hetero all the time. There's so much out there that is outside what we've been taught, which is the heteronormativity. And that's why we want to bring awareness that there is more out there, especially because the LGBT community is so strong and powerful and beautiful and teaching us so many things, that both of us, all of us. If you are interested, it's going to be on my IG Live. We're going to be sharing the information as well, so I hope you can make it too.
Yes, thank you so much. Did anybody else have any questions? I think everybody's excited to get the recordings. I'll get that out for everyone later on today. And I just want to also add that I'm putting here my Instagram handle and Yari's evolve _in.
because we need to evolve in so we can flow out.
Yes, everything is an inside job. And there's also, if you want to listen to emotional release, shame release meditations, I put the Insight Timer link. You can click on that, and that'll take you to some powerful meditations where you can shift even more. But remember, folks, that these 1 hour classes are not a replacement for one-on-one accelerations with Yari and I. So I'm so happy we can do these classes, and you can go even so much deeper. If you got this benefit right now, imagine what working one-on-one just for you alone would be like. Amazing. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, for saying yes to yourselves, and have a beautiful Saturday. Thank you, Yari, so much for all your wisdom. I loved it.
Thank you.
Okay, bye, everyone. Thank you.